I'm in an odd place in my career. Since the fall of Silverlight, I've been focusing on .NET and front-end development. JavaScript and TypeScript in the browser seem to be in more flux, pun intended, than ever. I'd love to be able to tell you that I understand all the permutations, but frankly I don't.
Just take it easy, man.
You can't handle the truth!
Forget it, Donnie, you're out of your element.
That's just my opinion, I could be wrong.
First up, JavaScript has a lot of developers, a lot. While TypeScript is amazing, I think some people are overwhelmed by some of the complexity introduced with defining types and needing strongly typed code. But even with all of its flaws, the JavaScript ecosystem isn't going away anytime soon. For the past few years, WebAssembly has been lauded as the future of the web. Sure, Blazor and Rust may be writing a lot of WASM, but I don't think these are moving people away from JavaScript web development anytime soon. Speaking of Blazor, I think it has some real possibilities. It's a real product, but I think the audience for Blazors isn't web developers, it's web forms developers. There's a vocal never JavaScript or C# only developers that won't ever be moved to use JavaScript, client-side or server-side, and for them Blazor is a natural fit. While I think Rust is a great language, I don't think Rust will be used as much for WASM as it is assumed. Rust is great for systems development when you need safe, fast code, but the audience that learns Rust, at least right now, is the polar opposite of web developers. At least that's how I see it. I think component vendors might use Rust or C# for performance-heavy scenarios, but until the JavaScript WASM bridge is easier, I don't see WASM being the future of web development. There's even a small but vocal minority that wants to just code in vanilla JavaScript. These frameworks seem to be opinionated and becomes the developer's job to figure out which one gels with both the style and organization skill set. Feels like web frameworks are the new object relational mappers. Someone is always writing a new one, and there's no such thing as the best. It will become commoditized at some point, and if you like React, like React. If you liked Angular, like Angular. If you like vanilla JavaScript, go for it. Anyone trying to sell you on the perfect web framework have missed the details that every lump of code is a compromise between audiences. This was true for ORMs and is now true for web frameworks. So I feel like we were really settling in with web development. Using the server for APIs and using the browser for thicker clients was solved. With this advent of packagers like Webpack and Rollup, we could have a decent development experience and an even better production experience. Code splitting, tree shaking, and optimized packaging made it all better. Enter Vite. Vite has changed the development experience for web development by loading source files as needed. Hot reload was happening without a lot of fanfare, and startup was incredibly fast. I was a happy developer. That's when I started to notice meta frameworks like Next and Nuxt. These are called meta frameworks because they extend the underlying framework, Next in React and Nuxt in Vue, to add plugin features to the underlying framework. While I haven't used Next, I'm making some assumptions as Nuxt was modeled after Next, as far as I can tell. These meta frameworks confuse me. Feels like much of what they do is related to how static site generators work. They use conventional routing and a plugin framework for common tasks like authentication. I can see their value in large projects, instead of building all the infrastructure manually. Being able to switch between server-side rendering, SSR, and static site generation, SSG, is laudable, but I think in general they are overused. They end up as a solution for client-side development and leak into the server far too often. I see some projects that end up running two servers. These servers are required to run a simple site, the meta framework running a node on the server and an API server that manages the REST and GraphQL requirements. It's not like there isn't a use case for using a meta framework, but I hope that developers don't just lean into them as you're taking ownership for a lot more code when you opt into them. There needs to be a payoff. I'm more comfortable with separating client and server. This means developing one or more API servers, since the APIs aren't only going to serve a web client in many cases. And maybe I'm old or a purist, but I think meta frameworks seem to be complicating what should be simple. If you've heard me talk about this over the last few years, You'll know that the whole idea of monolithic client-side development has been one of my soapbox issues. I wasn't sure what to call the alternative, but I used islands of functionality or interactivity, even occasionally calling it multiple page applications in opposition to the term SPA. Luckily, we now have a phrase for it, micro front ends. For me, developing many applications as a set of client apps instead of needing one huge interacting application that is meant to take over the entire UI in the browser is just easier. They have some key benefits, including isolating apps across large organizations, not requiring that everything be written in the same technology stack, and the ease of development since the actual micro front end is smaller and should be easier to test in isolation. This might be longer than I originally intended, but I'm glad to get that off my chest. Remember, it's just my opinion. I could be wrong. It's happened before.